Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the DLC Drop Podcast. Today my guest is Tatiana Tacca. She is the founder of Oni Vision and a brand consultant. She's going to give us some deep insights on how brands can approach the esports space, work with content creators, and discuss the cross-section of anime, gaming, and pop culture. Let's talk to Tatiana. Drop in the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop Podcast. All right, welcome to another episode of the DLC Drop Podcast. It is my pleasure to have Tatiana Tacca here, who is the founder of Oni Vision and a brand consultant. Somebody who, if you want to know esports, you got to talk to her. Tatiana, I am really excited to have you here today. I've followed your content for years. I really respect your experience and your perspectives on the esports space and beyond. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. And that's so sweet. I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun working in such a evolving and ever-changing space. It definitely always keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
But it's a really fun one to be involved in. So I'm really excited to be here and share some of my insights, experience, and all of that.
Absolutely. So let's start with a little bit of your consulting. So you've worked with a number of brands over the years. Esports is a very complicated, difficult landscape for a lot of brands, especially the non-endemics coming in from the outside saying, I know kids are doing this, but what do I do? Where do I do? How do I do it? Tell us about your consulting practice.
Absolutely. So I've been working in the gaming space the last 11 or so years. I've started in the mobile gaming side. I worked with a ton of various licensors from Marvel, Disney, the NFL, NBA, and so many others. And then I transitioned more into esports and gaming specific partnership areas, and worked on the agency side for multiple years. So I had essentially established Oni Vision late last year as basically an independent consulting and advisory practice focused on the gaming, esports, and anime space. So the idea is to essentially be a bit of a cultural consultancy advisor for brands, but also agencies who have represent a lot of brands, as well as direct with gaming organizations and entertainment IP. And the idea is to really bridge that gap, not just with esports, but broader nerd culture, thinking about strategy, creative opportunities, collaborations, and activations that really focus on the space's most valuable opportunities. As this continues to be a changing space, I'm constantly looking at trends and white spaces where brands can essentially intersect, as well as gaming properties. They're really developing so many new initiatives. So it's about looking at content creation, esports teams, esports leagues, gaming platforms, publishers, even anime licenses, and really seeing where are those opportunities to really intersect. And the reason why I wanted to start this practice especially is because, as I mentioned already, this space moves so quickly. And what we were seeing is that there were so many brands wanting to enter the space, but there wasn't enough, there was a need for accessibility, a need for kind of flexibility in the kind of top tier expertise that people could kind of tap into. There's a lot of activations at a variety of budgets. There's a lot of long-term deals, but there's a lot of test and learn, especially in such a new space. Most brands activating in gaming are new to it. They really, haven't done it before, or, maybe they have, but different departments or, different categories. And, it's really ultimately to help more organizations aim for success, because what we saw in the early days of esports is a lot of kind of media deals or brand logo slaps that, didn't necessarily hit on the KPIs that brands were really looking for or really hoping for. So, it's essentially a fight against lukewarm initiatives.
The DLC Drop podcast is sponsored by Ice Shaker. I've been a huge fan of this brand for the past few years, ever since I met founder Chris Gronkowski. What I love about this product is the brand story, the functionality, and the customization. iShaker is a Shark Tank company invested in by Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez, owned by NFL players Rob Gronkowski and Chris Gronkowski. I love using my iShaker anytime I'm driving to the podcast studio, I'm going skateboarding, or I'm at the gym. No matter what I'm doing, it just does a great job of keeping my drinks hot or cold. The customization for iShaker is something that's super unique. You can get any name, just about any logo engraved onto your iShaker and delivered to you within just 3 to 5 business days. Get your own DLC Drop branded iShaker at iShaker.com/DLC Drop. Save 20% on all iShaker products with the discount code DLC Drop. Yeah, I think what we've seen from a lot of brands who have experience in more traditional forms of advertising or traditional sports is, I'm just going to do what I do in traditional sports with, the League of Legends tournament, and the kids will see my logo and they'll start buying my insurance or whatever, right?
And that can be fine to take a similar approach to what you may be doing in more traditional sponsorship segments like sports, music, broader entertainment. But having the nuanced understanding of gaming and how that can be customized to this space, understanding the most valuable partners that can really execute what you're looking for and give you the kind of the creative flexibility as well. What's really exciting about this space is, let's say your sports sponsorship platform is kind of developed in a way because this is what you as a brand want and that's your core strategy, but also might be because of the lack of flexibility and the big dollars that are required to spend in traditional sports. Well, gaming is a much more flexible realm and a much more, it's getting more and more expensive every year, but it still is comparatively much less expensive than traditional sports. So you could potentially do things that are really first of its kind, never been done before. It can still ladder into your strategy, or you can do something totally different. You can do something that you wish you could have done in other sponsorship realms, and it's actually possible here.
Yeah, that's a great point. You talk about how gaming is more flexible. There's so many, I would say, different types of touch points that if you're wanting to reach a gamer, you can do that in all sorts of different ways, different games, streamers, content, live events, broadcast events. What are some of those unique ways that brands can reach young people through gaming where traditional sports is a little less flexible or more stringent, which restricts that type of creativity?
Absolutely. Well, at a high level, you have obviously esports leagues and teams, there's a lot of different variety, a lot of different kind of opportunity and variety in how you can approach those things. There's always ways to think about, which title, for instance, is trending, which title is, able to kind of maintain viewership and growth and really be flexible, which ones offer more kind of sports-like assets versus more customization. But what we're seeing, and there's experiential opportunities, there's direct game and publisher type relationships. I'd say the segment that we're seeing grow the fastest is one, a lot of in-game customization in a way that's never been able to, brands haven't been able to do before. So, a lot of brands, for instance, over the many, many years have asked, how can we actually get inside the game? And the reality is there was very few opportunities for that. Publishers didn't want brands to go inside their games because it kind of messed with the world that they're building, and killed the illusion of this space. But now with things like Minecraft, Fortnite Creative, Roblox, etc., that's a huge trend that brands are going towards in terms of creating their own worlds. Or what I'm actually a little bit more excited about is integrating into those worlds that are already quite valuable and already have guaranteed monthly and daily active users. There's the balance of creating your own world, but not having enough engagement, or integrating into a world. Maybe it's not as ownable as you would like, but there's a ton of scale there. So there's that scene, but then there's also the content creators, the Twitch streamers, the YouTubers, and now the emerging gaming TikTokers. This is where we're seeing actually a significant shift of brand dollars in gaming actually move towards in a pretty significant way. And I think the reason behind that makes a lot of sense. There's just a ton of guaranteed built-in scale. There's a lot of flexibility in how you can kind of collaborate with creators, because there's just so many of them to potentially partner with. And they have the big personalities, but there's a competitive component to many of them. They're quite skilled, but they're not the absolute best. They still have a personality that leans in on creator on the kind of those brand deliverables in a really powerful way. I think brands are really starting to understand that there's a lot more opportunity around live streaming than simply, looking at it as a kind of a media integration opportunity. You can really think about this as a experiential space. And I've always looked at live streaming as experiences, as an extension of a live, like a physical event. And I think as people start to understand that mind shift and really understand the value of live streaming, going that way towards content creators has really been a really powerful play. And I think it was Stream Elements that said there was a 79% increase in sponsored live streams last year alone.
Wow.
Which just shows just how much opportunity there really is around this specific segment.
Yeah, I think you make some great points with specifically the content creator part there. Number one, it seems a little easier to manage sometimes when you're, one person, no, not that you're not necessarily working with just one person at all times, but let's say you work with one big creator, let's say Dr. Disrespect or Tim the Tatman, for example. It's like, wait, I don't have to worry if they're going to win or lose on stage. Don't have to worry about, this tournament and the schedule of competing, and am I represented right at the physical tournament for my activation? And it just seems a lot easier to kind of put your arms around. And the other thing that I think really validates what you're saying with the rising content creators is we're even seeing esports orgs that will sign big content creators to raise their profile as an org. Speaking of here, I'm sitting here in Dallas, Texas today, where Complexity is based. And so we know Tim the Tatman was signed to Complexity, and it's like, wow, that's a huge move. Well, his massive audience is now a Complexity audience due to that association. So yeah, I think you're right on with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think the esports teams that have had that foresight of, thinking about content creators and how they fit into their organization has been crucial for so many of their success. Like I said, this space is one that just moves really quickly, and content creators themselves are quite flexible. They can really react to the trends that we're seeing in the space. So positioning them with the right competitive team, but also having the right balance of personality, also thinking about, their lifestyle and their product and the brand that they stand for. These are really all crucial things for the success of an esports team, because it really helps ensure that they're well positioned to move with the trends and with the times. A content creator, for instance, can pick up the next big streaming title that, who knows what that'll be, that, kind of pops live streaming viewership in a much easier way than an esports pro could. So, and they can do IRL content and, do cooking streams or cosplay or, things that are, culturally relevant, and then that team kind of has that value and that perspective. I mean, you're also seeing the dependence on esports industries kind of focused around content creators with the leagues themselves. You know, Valorant has an amazing strategy around co-streaming for its leagues where they'll partner with Tens or other really big Valorant creators to watch on their channels. And, you know, that bolsters their viewership in a really significant way. And now the LCS is doing the same thing. A lot of leagues are thinking about the built-in audience that comes with a content creator and the value of watching those things simultaneously.
Right.
And it really does offer a really great impact and it also just adds so much additional value for the brands that they're trying to sell in, because now they can not just have the media that they're, you know, providing in their own platform, but, you know, on a multitude of other channels as well.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to see how the earlier point, how teams have brought on content creators to kind of subsidize the competitive aspect of esports, where, you know, the competitive aspect, you've got to pay a lot of money to players for salaries. You've got to pay fees to be able to compete in the league for the title. That's losing you money. And so, oh my gosh, how do I make money to offset all of those costs? And sure, you have sponsorships, but, you know, these content creators and what they can bring in, sponsorships and beyond, is it's almost like you have the competitive team almost as an excuse to be an esports org. And then, okay, we're making our money with all of these variety of creators over here.
Certainly. Yeah, it's really about esports team, in my opinion, is really about kind of brand affinity. You know, you definitely have some sort of local play, especially, you know, in the like a Call of Duty Overwatch scene, certainly.
Yep.
But there has to be a defining kind of personality and traits as a form of like self-expression and personality alignment with teams, you know, that or an esports fan would naturally want to associate themselves with. So fandom is really built at a, you know, not a like regional basis. It's a kind of an indefined personality. So I really look at esports teams as a really great exercise in brand development, because you know, that is how you develop the affinity over the long run. And I think the teams that have not just been around the longest, but are, let's say, the most innovative, they're willing to take risks, they're trying new things, they're really thinking about how their teams, how their personality, how their content, etc., intersects culture. I think those are the ones that have been kind of the most successful to date.
Who are some of those teams that you're a big fan of what they've done on the business side, working with sponsors and working with creators?
Absolutely. Well, I think some of the more obvious ones that, you know, people point to are certainly 100 Thieves and FaZe Clan. I think, you know, they do a really great job of balancing that, you know, entertainment side of both competitive and personality. They have a really strong perspective on their own product, on what their logo stands for, cross collaborations. They've both done anime collabs, which, you know, in my book, gives them a lot of credit. Yep. With Naruto and Attack on Titan. You know, so I think from a, you know, who's done it best in terms of looking at these two segments, but also thinking about brand and product, certainly those orgs. But I also think that the ones that have been around a long time and really kind of understand their audience, you know, for instance, G2, I'd say G2 is definitely much heavier on the pendulum swing of competitive. Yeah. But they also still have a really strong perspective on brand and product. And, you know, that's a bit more of a priority for them is you know, that's really more of how they were founded. So it's also good that esports teams kind of like them are staying true to their roots as well and not like foregoing, you know, what they're known for what they think the future is at the same time. Good point.
Yeah, they're not selling their soul in that respect. Well, we've talked a bit about content creators. lightly touched on teams. This is a very complicated, complex space with so many moving parts. What are some of the other opportunities, if you want to say at a high level, let's say if I'm a brand and I'm saying, Tatiana, what are my opportunities in this space? What should I consider? What are some of those other options that I could look at?
Absolutely. Well, this is probably one of my favorite things about the gaming space is, there is just so many entry points that a brand can get involved in. If you look at leagues alone, there are, just so many options. There's so many teams. There's so many creators, gaming events, etc. That organizations can really lean in on, whether it's more about kind of long-term strategies, test and learns, thinking about kind of the licensing space or live experiences or ambassadorship. There's just so many touch points there. And so what I always recommend to brands is really that fragmentation of the space can definitely be something very intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not the easiest thing to conquer. It's why gaming strategies, I think, are so important, especially if you're thinking about a long-term play and at least having a perspective of what success looks like to this brand.
Yeah.
But I always say use that fragmentation to your advantage. The fact that there are so many touch points, yes, it can be very intimidating. And it also might mean that you're sending out a lot of RFPs and getting, let's say, responses back that might be almost more confusing. Is this what I'm looking for? Is this what I need? Is this the value that, I can sell into the higher ups and get them to, commit larger budgets to gaming in the next quarters. So I always recommend really take your time, get help from experts if you need it, and really look at what those offerings are, because chances are there is going to be a partnership, an opportunity, a collaboration out there that is going to serve your exact or very close to it needs, and at a variety of budgets. I've worked at this point with so many different brand categories in the space, and I've always been able to find success in the nuances. And so that's another really key consideration, is really think about the cultures that are developed and that exist within each community. Fandoms are kind of in gaming, in the gaming, in finding success in with gaming partners. Should be some sort of active or excited community, and that's really defined by the fandoms. And communities can be as segmented and as nuanced as the individual creator that you're working with. There's in-jokes, there's a new language, there's references and different kind of relevant titles and just things that a brand can really lean in on in a really fun and creative way. So, finding success in not just the fragmentation, but also the cultures, the multitude of cultures that exist within those things is really quite key.
Yeah, it's something that someone like yourself is going to offer a lot of value to a brand, is understanding not all gamers are the same. It's not one group of people. I talk to a lot of people about, the difference between traditional sports versus esports. And I always use the example that we know in traditional sports, the audience for the NBA is very different than Major League Baseball, is very different than soccer, it's very different from the NFL, right? And so it comes to the surprise of a lot of brand leaders who aren't gamers themselves that, wait a minute, your Call of Duty audience is going to be very different than your Valorant audience, your League of Legends audience, etc. Can you give, I'm curious, 2 examples, just whatever comes to mind, of 2 different communities or fandoms of 2 different titles, and just, what some of those nuances are that you're familiar with?
Absolutely. Let me give that a thought. So I know, like at the height of Fortnite, when 2018 or 19, I did actually a direct kind of overlap look between Fortnite audience and a League of Legends audience. And what was kind of interesting was there was only about a 30% overlap between those two titles. Again, it just really, what that kind of showcases as well is if a brand is spending in League of Legends and they're also spending in Fortnite, you're not necessarily talking to the same audience. So a kind of a dual League and Fortnite approach could actually be quite beneficial to to a more holistic brand strategy that's really trying to tackle both segments. And how might one go about that would also look very different. League of Legends community is definitely in a significant way defined by its competitive community, and that's where a lot of kind of active content exists. I mean, certainly there are a lot of like really great League streamers, such as Tyler One and others. A very natural role here might be a more competitive scene. And in this case, there are a ton of different characters. There's this really built out world, and the IP, I would argue, is getting even stronger and stronger with initiatives like Arcane, the Netflix animated series. So there's a lot of different ways to approach a League strategy. On the other side with Fortnite, it's all about you're looking at a much more, there's certainly a competitive component there, but it really is in many ways defined by personalities and the, the folks that are playing with each other. It's also really defined, instead of like a fully built out world, it's a lot of drops. It's a lot of, this is our story now, and that's our story now, and here's a new character, and now we're going to do Dragon Ball Z, and then we'll do Snoop Dogg, and then we'll do a Marvel drop or a Star Wars drop. There's, it's a lot about kind of what's in, and so focusing on, let's say creators like Cypher PK, or looking at, Ludwig's Fortnite competition, the no build competition. There are, that would take on a totally different strategy, or that strategy might be a little bit more metaverse specific, and you might lean in on Fortnite creative and using influencers to amplify that. So, that's a really good kind of showcase of, two very different strategies. But if you actually did them together, it would actually work nicely together, because, you're hitting two different audiences.
Right. I think one thing that's so important, and it's people like yourself who really provide this value, is, a brand could do a campaign with an esports title, and it doesn't deliver the results that they had hoped. But a big part of that might be they just targeted the wrong audience without even knowing that they're working with the wrong title, right? And so I would definitely call out to brands listening to this episode that, give esports a little bit more of a chance. Speak with Tatiana, because this is a place that people, it's kind of gained a reputation of, esports isn't delivering the ROI that we thought it would. There's brands and agencies. There's that narrative at times, and there's different reasons for that. But one of them can be just all of these cultural nuances. If you're looking at esports and you're like, we got to be in the esports, which one should we sponsor? And you throw a dart at your esports dartboard, and you're like, I guess it's Overwatch. It could very well be that gaming and esports is the right play for your brand, but you simply do not understand those nuances to understand which title should I be targeting, and is this a team approach versus a content creator approach versus a content approach, sort of a thing. And so to that point, things need to be very custom, and I know that you're a big fan of custom campaigns. Can you talk a little bit about what is your approach? If I'm a brand and I'm like, Tatiana, got to figure this out. I want to reach the gamer. And you say, John, your brand, we want to develop a custom campaign. What does that look like? What is your approach?
Absolutely. So, when it comes to going custom, I mean, the first thing that I always like to look at is what their ultimate goals are, and then what are things that we can do that's just a little bit different, or really takes advantage of the overlaps. I look at brand activation as like a little bit of cross-culture collaboration in a way.
Mm-hmm.
These brands kind of they've spent a lot of time building their own strategy, their own social footprint, their own voice, their and there are fans of those brands,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're more outwardly stated or not. You have there are a lot of folks who really look at a certain brand as maybe a level of achievement, or they use the product, or maybe they just kind of align really nicely with what that brand is. So really understanding where those things kind of exist in gaming, and thinking about things almost in a collaboration mindset, as opposed to, hey, let me sponsor you for this thing. Right. Really ensuring that there's almost like a philosophical excitement. A really kind of more obvious example of this would be like League of Legends and Louis Vuitton.
Yep.
That's a very good example of it was a brand licensing deal, sponsorship, in-game integration, all in one. But it didn't feel like a sponsorship. It felt like a collaboration.
It fit. It passes that common sense litmus test of like, oh, wait a minute, you have this dope ass luggage, and that's what this insane trophy is going to be inside. And I know they did more than just that, but that's kind of like the big shiny object of the partnership that people saw, and it's like, not only does that make a lot of sense, but that's dope.
Exactly. And, similarly, we've seen a lot of really cool music activation, cross-culture plays and things like that. I don't see why a brand couldn't similarly do something that feels that's relevant. Mm-hmm. Even if it is a brand that's, a little bit less, that, has a little bit less of a relevance to gaming.
Like an obvious tie to it, yeah.
An obvious tie to it, exactly. So, just as an example, one thing I did with Dr. Pepper was, their whole focus, name was, or their kind of brand identity is the one you deserve. Dr. Pepper is the one you deserve.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to a gaming audience? Well, streamers are streaming, have crazy streaming schedules. They don't take a lot of breaks.
Right.
So really recognizing that, that they deserve a break, they deserve a reward. Dr. Pepper is that reward, it is something that kind of feels very relevant to the brand, but it also feels quite great to the content creators. And so what we did to kind of celebrate that was a kind of a Treat the Streamer marathon live streamed event, where we partnered with, 8 streamers. They all did back-to-back 2-hour, 1 hour to 2 hour segments. But the twist was that we used our activation budget on custom gifts that we collaborated on with the streamers, things that would, things as, to kind of really celebrate the one you deserve. So with Fusli, we got her a new neon sign for her streaming room and a brand new acoustic guitar. For other creators, we got them Dr. Pepper fridges for their streaming room. We got them, neon signs, whatever it was that, hosted experiences, whatever it was that the creators themselves felt they wanted and would help kind of amplify either their personal or streaming life. We got that for them, and cool. We created content specific to that. So again, a really great way to showcase how a brand's active role in the scene can really feel, again, like quite collaborative and a bit more unique.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking to the cultural nuances that you mentioned earlier, if you didn't know that streamer that well, you wouldn't know that she would love an acoustic guitar, right? Like, who would guess that a streamer would want an acoustic guitar? And it's like, well, streamers are complex humans like the rest of us, and I know that this person loves playing guitar. And so I think that's cool too, is just the importance of that customization, that deep understanding, rather than just seeing everyone as you're all the same, you have the same interests, you just want to do digital things. It's like, no, there are interests outside of that, and this is how that person feels validated and valued.
Exactly. I like to think of content creators, because they are multifaceted, multidimensional individuals, and don't just live and breathe the games that they play. And there is a lot of things that they love. There's a lot of just very relevant fandom that's brands can lean in on, and that's a part of their personality. It's a part of their culture, and really looking at creators and thinking, okay, this is what you do well. You stream these games well, or are you good at IRL content, or whatever it is, and you lean in on what they do well, but then you amplify that experience, and you eventize everything, and you're continually adding value for the streamer, for their audience. That's really the way to think about it.
Yeah, I'll share one of my favorite case studies in esports that I've seen, and I didn't do it. I'm just a fan of it. But it was Turtle Wax with Optic Gaming, and what I love, it's similar to what you're talking about here with, like, what are the non-gaming behaviors of these complex humans, right? And so they you'd think, okay, Turtle Wax with a Call of Duty team, like, what the heck did they do? Well, Crim6, when he was with Optic at the time, that dude loves his Porsche. Like, if you scroll his Instagram, it's more Porsches than it is COD, and they also worked with Hector Rodriguez, who has a G-Wagon. They worked with Flamesword, who loves motorcycles. And they just leaned into this natural behavior that was already happening and created content around these guys keeping their cars clean, which they're doing with or without Turtle Wax, right? They just put that name and that brand to what they were already doing. And then they did a lot of extra content with Crim, where they wrapped his Porsche in the same design as his custom SCUF controller, that motherboard type pattern. And then they shipped his Porsche to Call of Duty World League events, where you could take a picture with the Turtle Wax Porsche. And then they expanded doing stuff with Splice and things like that. But I think that really reinforces your point of look a little deeper. Just because your company might be a soft drink, or might be car wax, or might be a logistics company. I'm thinking DHL and Dota. I'm sure you're familiar with what they did there as well. Yes. But there's a play for you. Just take the time to listen, talk to Tatiana, right? Understand these nuances, and there is a fit more often than not, even if it's not very obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's a really great example. And actually, what I've found is that creators will, if they don't think something will work for their channel, they're let you know. If
yeah, they will. Loudly,
no, they'll let you know. Like, if you have an idea that's a little bit out there, there is probably a creator who's never done it before, but it still would be a natural fit. It still makes sense for, to try it out. Cosplaying, really good example. A lot of brands have been leaning in on, different kind of cosplaying as a tactic for various activations.
Yeah.
There are creators who, that's their thing, and they really like to cosplay. And there are some that are like, they've never done it before, but there are some that kind of sound really out of the box, right? Like, is that really for them? But it's kind of so almost out there that it's can really create a moment. It can cause kind of a viral buzz. It's such a kind of out of the box thing for them, but they can handle it really well that it would actually work great.
Right.
So, and that's kind of like a tough thing to always know, like, is this actually a good idea for them, or should I be looking at it for someone else? Or should I be looking at it for a more out of the box creator because it would be so unique for them to do it that it actually would work?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a two-way street of
exactly.
You're going to get more out of a creator as well, that when they're into it, they're going to do more. Just like anything we naturally enjoy, your favorite part of your work, you probably spend more time doing that versus the things that you have to do, but you don't really enjoy. And when you get a content creator who's really into something, and when you lean on them for their ideas, right? Like
they're called creators for a reason. They are very creative. So I always love to take the approach of, even if I come to them with an idea, I always leave it open for them to intersect their own take and own twist on things. And I also give them the opportunity to ideate against that idea. And I think the key is not to come with them with an open canvas or just a blank wall, because, that can be really intimidating. And they're creative, but they're not brand experts at the same time, even though they may have worked with a lot of brands. But if you give them some wiggle room within the box, let's say, to work in, that can be the difference between a good campaign and a highly executed, successful campaign that really kind of hits and checks all the boxes for the creator, for the audience, and, for yourself.
Yeah, that's really well said. I always say the script for the influencer is an oxymoron, because you should not be giving them the script. They have built that audience for a reason. There's a reason people tune into them, and it's because of what they do and how they do it. And so lean into that. Don't compromise that. But it's a really good point too, to not go too far and say, I have no ideas, what would you do? But to say, hey, we're roughly thinking XYZ. We want to accomplish this. Our product is about this. We know you do this. Can you take it from here? Or let's just do some brainstorming, and you'll come up with, I think that's a great formula to equal success there.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch a little bit on anime. Anime we haven't talked a whole lot about on this podcast, but it is very relevant to gaming culture. And so why don't you give us a little bit of 101 on the cross-section of gaming, pop culture, and anime, and then we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. So, when I started my consulting practice, I knew that, esports and gaming, live streaming would be major components to, the value that I was offering. But I made a conscious decision to make anime a significant and just as equal pillar of those things. And the reason for that is not just because this is a space I absolutely adore, live and breathe as a fan, just as someone who constantly sees and looks at the future of collaborations. But, anime is one of those scenes that has just grown so significantly. And I just think we're really even just seeing the beginning of that. We saw over the last 2 years about a 118% increase in global demand of anime content. It's actually one of the fastest growing content genres since the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I really look at anime as a very relevant thing to gaming because, from my perspective, anime activation is essentially activating around gaming culture and vice versa. I think that when you activate around gaming culture, you're really activating around anime in a similar way. Mm. So, and these two things, look, there are there gamers who are not fans of anime or, have no interest in it? Absolutely. But there is such a strong link between the two. And as I'm doing more kind of anime collaborations and work around various anime series, around my work with Crunchyroll in particular and Funimation, I'm just seeing such a very relevant and exciting intersection, and one that just we're already, has already been naturally shown. The VTuber scene in particular has really, really leaned in on anime aesthetics for VTuber characters. A lot of esports pros and content creators use anime profile pictures for their profile pictures,
right.
or use anime characters in their official graphics, or they'll create anime versions of themselves, and that is the brand that they're putting out there. It's a very, very, like, from just even removing the component of actual official collaborations aside, the gaming audience has been adopting anime as a form of self-expression for so long. But now, especially content creators are really, making that a part of their personality and a core part of the content and the product that they're putting out there. And then on the esports side, certainly, we've seen some really great anime collaborations to date with Team Liquid and Naruto, FaZe Clan and Naruto, with 100 Thieves and Attack on Titan. And then beyond that, even, we even just see things, anime references used by shoutcasters and hosts. I remember... just watching an LCS final, and the shoutcaster said, he's writing him in his death note. You can't, that's such, and anyone would understand what that meant.
Right.
And the chat was just, spamming just so much stuff about that. So, I think there's that culture play, and then that leans in and supports the opportunity for more official collaborations. And then even from an experiential perspective, we're seeing so many creators lean in on anime events. Anime Expo in LA had so much gaming relevance. We saw a lot of different creators go. We had Offline TV actually have their own booth with their own merchandise space, massive lines there. There's just a lot more that can be activated against this. And I think that's a really exciting thing for brands, to think about, okay, how are we showing up? And does anime from a kind of activation perspective make sense for our strategy?
Yeah.
And especially in product collaboration and stuff. Just actually as an example to that, in a collaboration I worked on with Dr. Pepper and Fuslie, we collaborated on a custom gaming chair. It was actually a recliner chair that had a built-in fridge.
Oh, cool.
And it had, it integrated the Dr. Pepper and Fuslie logos and together in really, adorable ways. And we thought, let's do something a little bit different. So we actually worked with Fuslie's main artist, who does really great anime art, and we created a anime artwork of Fuslie drinking Dr. Pepper, and it was hidden. It was a hidden feature actually inside the refrigerator, so you opened it and it would appear there.
Super cool.
So just a really sweet way to think about the space and how it can be leveraged, and that doesn't require a big license collaboration, but I would argue that there's a big opportunity for that, and one that makes a lot of sense for both brands as well as gaming properties.
Yeah, anime art is obviously such a recognizable, unique style of art, and so you see a lot of collaborations really lean into that artwork, or even just featuring that artwork. My origin is in the skateboarding world, and Primitive Skateboards is one of the top skateboard companies, really a leader in their branding and marketing. And they do all sorts of anime collabs where they have skateboard graphics, from anime. And so
Actually, that's why I know about Primitive.
Oh,
so from
incredible.
my end, I wouldn't. This is a brand I would not have heard of had it not been for their continued collaborations in the space. So again, showcases a reason for thinking about cross culture and reaching new audiences that way.
Yeah, you could engage a whole new audience and a whole new segment that, to your point right now, would never have heard of this brand other than you tapped into that passion point and they saw the collab. And then, I look forward to seeing you do kickflips out there. So we understand there's this collab, but really leveraging, highlighting the art. What are some other ways that you see brands engaging with anime to reach those audiences?
Certainly the licenses themselves are, increasingly valuable, and, things that, brands can obviously really consider when aligning themselves. The growth of Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, like these have become household IPs and name brands now, and ones that offer just as much kind of really creative collaboration opportunities as any other kind of entertainment property out there, as well as any kind of personality fit. I've really loved a lot of the work that I've done with Crunchyroll, especially because, I really get to take a look at a lot of these series releases and movie releases and really kind of pinpoint very relevant influencers for those things. So, for instance, with Attack on Titan, the final season, we were constantly seeing creators like Tim the Tatman and Nicewig on a weekly or multi-weekly basis tweeting about the show and just, hype, wow. Just being a part of the hype on a ongoing basis. And that was so much fun to see. And so, we partnered with them on Attack on Titan themed streams. We thought about, okay, as a entertainment property and as a series, how can you as a rights license holder, as a entertainment property, lean in on this gaming space as well. So we did things like trivia with chat and reactions to the last episode and favorite character rankings, and then we even thought about how does gameplay kind of have a twist to it. So Attack on Titan was kind of ideal because they had a collaboration with Call of Duty at the time. So we had a custom Attack on Titan Warzone with Tim, but with Apex Legends and Nicewig, there's actually a mode where it's primarily grappling as the primary gameplay mechanic, which is also the primary fighting mechanic in Attack on Titan. So we had kind of this custom gameplay that was very relevant to the show. So stuff like that just was incredibly, incredibly well received. The audience themselves just saw it as such a perfect partnership. So a lot of the comments that you'd see is like, this is such a W for Tim and for Nicewig, like perfect partnership. And, so recognizing, again, it's like about seeing where the fandoms are and really kind of recognizing that and leaning into it. And also being quite creative. Another collaboration we did was with Pokimane. She, had seen and was a fan of the show Jujutsu Kaisen, and the movie was coming out. So we had given her an early access screening to watch the movie before anyone else, but also we allowed her to invite influencer friends to watch it with her. So Valkyrie and Ariasaki and other creators came over. They had a slumber party, and Crunchyroll put on a big kind of house party for her. We had a custom themed cake. We had our own kind of creative assets that we put on popcorn and gift bags, and we had the Uniqlo shirts available for everyone who attended, and we made it kind of this really fun, exclusive social moments that was just for her.
I love that.
And a really great way to like bring awareness to the movie. So I really like examples like these as well, because I think we're finally starting to see Hollywood recognize Twitch streaming and gaming for their activation opportunities. You know, they invest so much in nighttime talk shows and stuff like that. And
Sure.
the fact that they had been overlooking the space for so long was definitely an oversight. And they're finally starting to recognize that.
That's a great point.
These kinds of collaborations kind of show the power of what entertainment can do in the scene as well.
I love that. You're giving some great reasons for people to consider anime as, you know, one of their entry points to reach gamers. If you were to say there's one thing that I would caution you from doing when interacting with anime, what would that be for brands? Don't do this.
Really good question. I have to think about that. I think it's just, you know, as I said kind of before, it's about really identifying, you know, where the fandoms and the credibility exists.
Okay.
You know, so never force fit. There are, like I said, a lot of creators out there that really don't. It's not their thing. You know, maybe they tried it out and they were just like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
You know, so and then there are certain creators who, you know, like different series. Not everyone is a fan of Dragon Ball Z and Naruto and One Piece, you know?
Right.
Maybe they align more with the romance or slice of life categories. Maybe they're more of a Spy Family type personality. So, you know, not force fitting is definitely key as well. And then I wouldn't necessarily, unless there's kind of like a reason to, or you know, like this is a scene that deserves respect in the same way that gaming deserves respect. You know, this is a emerging scene that is increasingly becoming more relevant every day to the mainstream.
True.
You know, this is not like Nerd and Mother's Basements. You know, kind of. This is something that, you know, there's a lot of value and so the audience should, you know, kind of be that I think that should be recognized, that, you know, it's a growing fandom and there's a lot of respect. It's a really, you know, one of the things I love about anime as well as manga is it's just such a beautiful art form as well. Like the animation is, you know, in my opinion, some of the most innovative stuff that I've seen, and you know, in the last year, its take on animation, and you know, you know, seeing that as such, I think and really respecting the scene is important.
I love that. Those are great takeaways. Boy, our time has flown. We're already at the end of this episode. I can't believe it. I've been taking notes. I've been learning a lot. I know our audience is definitely going to be taking a lot away from this episode. If you'd like people to leave this episode with one thing, whether you're talking to a brand, whether you're talking to entrepreneurs who are starting their own consulting journeys or anything else, what is the one thing that you would want people to take away?
You know, don't have fun with it. You know, this is a scene that continues to, like I said, adapt, grow, be flexible. It has a lot of room for creativity. There's a lot of trends being developed around it, and there's a ton of white space and new opportunities. So there's a lot of, at the root of it, there's just so much fun to be had here, and really looking at the collaborations and efforts that can be done. You know, so it you know, can certainly be intimidating, and there can be certainly a lot of big budgets or emerging budgets, you know, certainly being spent against it, but it's entertainment at the root of it, and the more kind of the more you're willing to be a little bit playful, be a little bit silly, be a little chaotic, or not take yourself too seriously.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
So respecting the KPIs that you ultimately need to do. I think the the more success you'll find from it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in this space we can get so focused on ROI and KPIs and all these other business acronyms, right? Reporting back, trying to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, XYZ. Yeah. And we forget that we are watching cartoons and playing video games, and we should just be having the best time with this, just incorporating business into a way that makes it better for everyone.
Exactly. There's a lot of mischief and silliness to find among, those big kind of PR worthy activations. Absolutely.
Last question. What are ways that people can get in touch with you and connect with you in the ways that you'd like them to?
Anyone who's listening can absolutely feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there quite often. And I'm always happy to connect with folks. You can also find me on Twitter at Tatiana MUFC, because I also happen to be a really big Manchester United fan.
There we go. All right.
For context on that. I'm an open resource for folks who may need it, and I'm always down to chat if folks want to get connected.
Wonderful. Well, I so appreciate your time here today. You've got a wealth of experience and you've got tremendous insights, just a beautiful understanding of this space. And so thank you for sharing all of that with our audience today on the DLC Drop podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Future I Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.